I've been catcalled from walking down the street, through car windows. I've had people say it to my face while I'm walking down the street.
They were yelling something in Spanish at my friend. I don't understand what it was, but she just took it, she ignored it, and she just continued walking.
I would have people catcall me or follow me or threaten me, and this is a daily basis.
Back home in Pakistan, I was like in 7th grade, and I was walking on the street with my dad, and then so there was this random guy. He was like walking in the opposite direction. It was so sudden, and like he just grabbed my ass and then left.
I remember when I was younger and that would start happening, and it was just super confusing and like a really violating feeling.
In that moment, I felt really scared.
Terrified, especially for a girl who's 4'11".
I felt kind of embarrassed of myself.
It's kind of gross, you know?
In some way, I actually thought it was my fault.
There's nothing you can really do about it when it happens.
You say something back, and then, you know, maybe you escalate things, or you don't say anything and that escalates things. It's really a lose catch-22 situation.
And then after that, I didn't think it would have that much impact on me, but it did.
I have a hard time just being out in the world. I can't go to certain areas. I can't take public transportation without feeling unsafe.
I really liked going out, especially with my dad and my family, but after that day, I stopped going outside. Like, I would rarely go outside.
It's everywhere. I think all over the world, street harassment exists.
The vast majority of women and folks who aren't cis men, if you ask them about street harassment, they'll say that they've experienced it.
In fact, recently, there was a survey done in the US that found where about 85%, I think, of women respondents said they had faced some harassment at some point in their lives.
If we ask young men in the US, the UK, and Mexico about different kinds of harassment, whether online or in the physical world someplace, it's about 30% a month have done some kind of harassment. So that includes street harassment as well as other forms. We've done research on the topic as well in the Middle East, where we find about half of guys have ever carried it out. So I think it's fair to say that some kinds of harassment, whether street or in the virtual world, which are also, probably rising in prevalence, are kind of, almost like young men's sport.
I would always argue that this is more about power than it is about sex and about repressed sexuality or anything like that. I think it's about power and wanting to have power over people.
It's definitely not just cis women. It is anyone that falls outside of the power-holding, gender norm, male stereotype that can be targeted.
But the same idea that you're somehow an object of my sexual gaze, or you're in a space that's mine and I'm going to dictate, or you should dress or perform in a certain way, or you don't, that fits my stereotypes, and if you don't, I'm using some kind of words or threat against you. That's kind of all part of this big pool of, or what do we want to, let's call it this cesspool of negative ideas about masculinity. We tend to use more the idea of the man box as a set of norms and ideas that we're somehow in charge when a relationship happens. That the street is our world, and the inside world of bedrooms and homes and all that is where women are supposed to be. All those things, I would say, are part of ideas about manhood that are also related to harassment. And I think rather than to see it as just some single bad behavior, I think it's more useful to see it as part of these ideas about how we bring up boys and men.
They feel entitled over women's bodies. They feel that they are socially allowed to behave in that way. So those are some of the gender inequalities that lead to the acceptability and use of violence.
We're better if we buy into a healthy, connected version of manhood. We all have a stake in a healthier version of masculinity.
So I think safety and security is one of the main concerns. Am I safe to do A, B, or C that I want to do because I might potentially experience some type of harassment on the streets?
It basically restricts women's mobility and opportunities. So in some cultures like the US, in sort of mainstream US culture, where families are not going to restrict a girl from going places because she's being harassed, the restriction can come from within. But in a lot of cultures, like in South Asia, and I'm from India, so I grew up with this, families restrict girls going out and women going out because of fear of especially sexual street harassment. So it really restrains what women can do.
In some cases, street harassment is something that just is so normalized that girls are expected to go to all these different activities and potentially just become accustomed to the experiences of street harassment as part of their daily life.
For women who face it every day, there's serious mental health issues. And we used to go to college afraid every day. And I come from a pretty upper middle class protected household. So women who have to go out on the street to make a living, to get their groceries, to just live a normal life, it really adds to the stress if all the time you're worried about, is someone going to pinch me, touch me, stare at me, catcall, just because of stepping outside. That has a toll on physical health.
It changes how you navigate your world, and it's very impactful on your body and your psyche.
We've heard of a mix of empowerment and self-defense training. So I think that's great in terms of empowering girls.
In the developing world, there are safety, or what's called safety audits, where in a community, young women and people work with young women and girls to understand what they need to feel safe. And then we'll work with providers of those services.
However, I also feel like when street harassment happens, it's never the fault of whoever experiences, right? And it's not even the fault, but it's not the responsibility of them to stop the event from happening either.
Me Too has made us look a lot at a few men, but I think looking at harassment makes us say there's a lot of men involved, and therefore prevention has to be a lot bigger in scale than just calling out a few men.
Especially in the context of us continually fighting for gender rights. And I think this administration has really demonstrated how tricky that is right now.
One, what we're trying to do is get it known so that workplaces, schools, and the rest are taking it seriously and say, we need to do something about this. Once we got your attention there, then to say, so what do you need to do? What
we really need to focus on is the idea of equality as a human being. That it doesn't matter whether you're female or male, you're an equal citizen, so you're entitled to equal access to everything, including public spaces. And men and boys need to understand that. We do a lot of critical group education, that is spaces where you come together and particularly have young men and adult men think about it, sometimes on their own, sometimes just male-only spaces, and other times together with women, to talk about how is it that, how can we collectively call out, do some values clarification of kind of what is harassment and what isn't.
Also heard of bystander interventions, so when we're training people walking by to potentially interrupt that violence or not stay silent.
If you are in a guy and you're in a group where others are harassing or catcalling, do something to stop it.
You can approach a woman as a normal person and talk to them. Like if you actually want her attention, you can ask her if she wants to, but catcalling is more aggressive. It's not caring if she wants it or not.
If I could say something to all the harassers in the world, I would say stop. I would say don't do it. I would say it changed my behaviors, and I've experienced sexual harassment, and it was traumatizing, emotionally taxing. It made me come up with strategies that I wish that my daughter doesn't have to come up with.
Imagine if it was your sister who was being catcalled or harassed. how would she feel about it? How would it impact her life? How would it hurt her?
A boy should think, okay, this is a person just like me. Would I like it if someone did this to me?
What do you gain from making a woman feel unsafe? From openly objectifying her?
It's not cool. Let's talk. I know you're trying to express something here, but this is not the way to do it. And let's talk.
I'm less interested in saying something to them than I am to the people who have to experience that every day. And what I would say to those people who experience street harassment every day is that none of this is your fault. You don't deserve this. It doesn't matter what you're wearing. It doesn't matter if you're going out alone. None of this is what could possibly lead you to deserve this. The person who's doing the catcalling, who's doing the harassing, who is initiating gender violence, they are 100% responsible.